Experiment today on whether things will sink or float. So we have some random items here. We have a bowl, apple, dinosaur, Easter egg, some Legos, a banana, a shark, a boat, all different kinds of things, a rock. We're going to throw them in the water here and see if they sink or float. So what will determine whether it sinks or floats is how heavy something is and how much air it has inside of it. So I'm going to start with two things. This is a rock. Rocks are very heavy and they don't have any air in them usually at all. They're just very dense, which means everything's really packed in there. So, can you see the sink, Justin? You see the water? I'm gonna drop it. Oh, it fell right to the bottom. Now, I'm gonna show you this ball. Now, this ball is bigger than the rock, but the ball is full of air, and the air is very light, so it's not very heavy. So the ball is going to float. Even if I push it down, it floats back up to the top because the air is lighter than the water. So ball definitely floats. Rock definitely sinks. Okay, now let's try a couple things that I'm not sure of. How about an apple? Apples kind of have a lot of air in them, but they're also pretty heavy. So let's see. Oh, it floated. So we know an apple will float. How about a dinosaur toy? It's pretty light. I'm thinking it's gonna float too. Definitely floated. See, this dinosaur is full of air inside. His middle is not solid, so he's got lots of air inside that's making him buoyant. Let's try this pen. Pen floats again. It's got lots of air inside. Now these two look the same, right? One's black and one's white, but they're both Legos. Now this Lego floats on top. This Lego is a special Lego. It's got a weight in it. So even though they look exactly the same, that one's heavier, so it dropped right to the bottom. So we're gonna put sink and floats. Now, shark. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, now this one's going to be a tricky one because right now it's floating because there's a bubble of air inside. But as you can see, it's sinking because it's also got a little hole and the air is coming out of the little hole. So let's see, we can get all that air out. You can see it make little bubbles. Now it's sunk. So when it's got air inside of it, it floats. When it lets the air out and fills with water, it sinks. So I'm going to put that in the sink pile because it eventually sank. We've got a rock. We're pretty sure that's going to sink, right? Oh, yeah. Sank like a rock, as they say. Okay. And let's see. How about this Lego boat? Like any good boat, it floats. But what happens if I fill it with a little bit of water? Oh, it got a little lower, got a little lower. It's still floated. That's a pretty good boat. Okay, in the float pile you go. Now we've got a cork. Okay, that definitely floats. Did we do the banana yet? No, let's see. Oh, bananas float. Now I've got a tricky one. Got this egg. It's a hollow egg. Had it left over from Easter. Put that in. Definitely floats because it's full of air. But how can we make it sink? Let's try to do an experiment. Let's see if we put a rock in and make it heavy, if it'll sink. Nope, it's still floating. How about, see these little holes in the top? How about if we let it fill full of water? Then it doesn't have the air in it to make it float. Let's see how much water we have to put in. Nope, still floating. See all the little bubbles coming up? That's the air coming out of the egg. The air is always going to rise up to the top. Oh, it's getting lower. I think we're close. There, we made it sink. It's now sunk all the way down in the water. Because now it's heavier and it doesn't have the air to make it float to the top. See how much water was in it. Ugh. It filled up with a lot of water. Now we can also show that using this bowl. Right now the bowl's pretty light and it's got a lot of surface area, so it's gonna float. See, like a little boat. But if we, let me get a cup here. I'll just use the egg. If we fill it full of water, it'll start to get lower and lower, and it will eventually sink as it gets heavier and heavier and full of water. Oh, there, it sunk. So sometimes something can be both a floater and a sinker. It all depends on how heavy it is and how much water it's pushing out of the way. Just like big, huge ships are super heavy, but they float.
We can test that.
Yeah. But this one always floats because it has air. This one, this whole area, this blue part is all full of air. So it's going to float like a big ship. But if a ship ever gets a hole in it and fills with water, it starts to sink because it doesn't have the air making it float anymore, and it's heavier and heavier and heavier. So you could see that boat was starting to sink. Ah! Oh, too bad. Okay, well, I hope you had fun watching Sink or Float with me. And you can play this at home in the bathtub too. Find a couple different things and decide whether or not you think they will sink or float, and do your own science experiment. Okay, bye.